Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of HiFi Hour. I am here, actually, I have the pleasure of talking to Jason Stoddard from Schiit Audio. How you doing, Jason?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. It's actually great to be able to finally meet you and talk to you. I've been, emailing back and forth with Denise for a while, and now we're here. Here we are.
Yeah. No, yeah. Denise is great at, actually managing a lot of our marketing stuff, such as it is. I mean, our marketing is, I think, kind of, me yammering and writing a book most of the time. So there you go.
Which I am reading your book right now, and if for the folks that haven't checked it out yet, Schiit Audio does have a book available on Amazon, which will be linked in the description below. So I want to start out with what sets Schiit Audio apart from the traditional structures. So a few things that kind of spoke to me were the fact that you're made in the USA, the fact that you're inexpensive. It's not an expensive brand. You only do direct sales. You don't have any cringy or gimmicky marketing.
Well, a lot of people might argue about that.
and you were a garage startup.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to go through those few of those just to kind of touch base on that. A lot of people outsource their stuff. Obviously, they either pull off the shelf or they outsource their stuff to other countries. What made you decide that you wanted to stay made in USA?
Well, I had a little bit of experience with other companies that were doing direct sale and making things in China. And one of the refrains we heard a lot was like, this is not the same as, the prototype. It's not the same as the first article. I'm being very polite there. The words used were quite a bit stronger, when you're talking about, pulling, $500,000 worth of inventory out of boxes and either reworking it or trying to figure out, how to deal with it, with a manufacturer who's half a world away. And I'd made stuff in the past in the US, and I figured, well, when we started, I figured, let's see, can you do it, at prices that make sense? And I actually was pleasantly surprised that not only were all of our, a lot of our old suppliers were still around, or, close relatives of our own suppliers, the guys who actually make the chassis, the guys who make the PC boards, the guys who do the transformers. Not only were they still around, but the prices hadn't gone out of scope or anything. And it's like, well, fine, we'll make things in the U.S. And so for us, that means if we have a problem, we drive across the freeway, literally 5 miles to our metal vendor, and then have a little discussion with them. Or our board house is 20 minutes away. Though we're starting to do some in Nevada now, so that isn't exactly true. And then our transformers are up in NorCal, so we're very close coupled. It gives us, I think, better control over what we're doing. We can be more nimble, and if there are any issues, it seems to be easier to work it out. And like I was asked recently, it's like, how do you feel about the future? Given that there's some Chinese native brands that are starting up and doing things. And I'm like, I'm feeling fine. They cost more than we do. And that really stopped him. He's like, wait a minute. So you're making stuff in the US with people getting paid like way above a living wage, in California, and actually now, as of 3 days ago, now in Texas. And it's less than Chinese competition. I'm like, exactly.
That's correct. Yeah,
there you go.
I know a lot of your competitors, well, would-be competitors, are considerably more expensive. And what's funny is I've noticed in this industry that the Asian market likes things that are made in the USA, would prefer it.
Yeah.
So, which is a difference of culture, because obviously here in the US, people appreciate that as well, that it's made in the USA. They'd rather it say made in USA than made anywhere else, I'm sure. And that kind
And
of segues to direct sales and being inexpensive. Do you feel that that kind of plays on each other? Like the fact that you're doing direct sales and not having to deal with, you know, distribution and stuff like that. That's how you can kind of keep the
you,
price at a
yeah,
competitive rate.
you pretty much have to do direct sale.
Mhm.
It's a huge advantage. We don't have to. The dealers don't have to take their margin, which is what they should be taking, because theoretically a great dealer is going to provide value, they provide a service, so they're due some margin, right?
Mhm.
Makes sense. Direct sale cuts that out. Some people really like that. Some people really don't like that. The tide appears to be going, towards direct marketing. When we chose to do direct, it was very weird. I think there were a couple speaker companies, and there was Emativa, on the electronics end that were doing it, but almost nobody did. And we had a back and forth discussion, and I think it was cemented when Mike was like, Mike Moffat, my business partner, said,
Mhm.
if I don't ever have to chase down another dealer to get them to pay us ever, it's a great day. And I'm like, well, we're gonna try direct, and we're gonna see how it goes. And direct has gone very well. And as you probably know, some of the older names in audio have started, at least experimenting with direct, or they've gone, fully direct since we've done that. So it appears to be, if you can provide a good enough experience to the customer, if you can provide enough support, it seems to actually, be a great way to do it. The loss is, of course, you can't go to a dealer anymore. You can't compare a bunch of things. You can't. There's no single focal point,
Mhm.
where theoretically you can get a better read on what's good for you. So that's a downside, but so far everyone seems to really love direct.
It keeps everything in house and keeps your process controlled, so I can understand that.
Yes.
Um, Now, being from a garage startup, a lot of huge influential companies, obviously Apple included, and many others, have started that way. Very humble beginnings. You know,
Yep.
um, can you tell me a little bit about how that progressed? Did it scale over time, or was it overnight? Hey, we're going to go get a factory and an office and everything.
We actually toughed it out in the garage for, I think, around just under a year.
Okay.
And by toughing it out, I meant we actually started in a garage full of cars, a 3-car garage with 3 cars in it. And then, really less than a month in, I said, okay, let's move one of the cars out so we have some space to work with. And then we had this palatial 1-car space, everything was assembled and tested and shipped from there. And Lisa, in fact, still has, my wife, she used to do shipping, and she has this piece of plastic that she put down, and she has it hung up in our kitchen, that says, "You will put nothing here," meaning this is my shipping space. I need to have this for shipping, for packing and shipping. And so everyone was proscribed from putting anything there. That's how packed in we were. We built out the attic, for storage, and we put stuff up there, and we were using the rest of the garage for storage, to the point where we couldn't get the other cars. We were putting storage in the backyard if it wasn't, weather sensitive. And then finally, I'm this is like 11 months in. I'm like, Mike, so now we have 2 or 3 guys coming to my house every night to actually build stuff,
Mhm.
in an HOA, a homeowners association neighborhood. I said, what's going to happen really soon is someone's going to pick up the phone and go, hey, this is not a great idea. So that's when we got our first little shop, and it was a real special place. It was very inexpensive, and it was actually an old newspaper shop that was like 1,800 square feet, and we went there. But yeah, we started in the garage because I didn't know how big this was going to get. I didn't, I figured, oh, this is a nice little hobby business. Maybe make a car payment or something. Maybe we'll put a shed in the backyard. And yeah, by 8 months in, it was like, this is not going to be a hobby business. And by 11 months in, it's like, we better get the heck out of the garage. Uh,
Mhm.
and it's been kind of up from there. I think we spent just under a year in the first shop, and then we took a 5,300 square foot place, and then we added on a bunch of units. So I think we're about 16,000 now in California and about 10,000 in Texas. And Texas is where we're moving production of all the smaller units, like Magni Modi, Bailey, etc., and maybe Magnus and Modis.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Now in your book, you do go over entrepreneurship a lot, and I mean, as you know, entrepreneurship can be a dicey and uncertain leap of faith that most people take. But you told Mike Moffat that your product was either going to sell or you were going to have Christmas presents until the end of time.
Yes,
That's
exactly.
And I'm sure that resonates with a lot of seasoned entrepreneurs, but for the younger crowd or for the people that are just getting started, what advice can you give those ambitious entrepreneurs that are in that same exact situation where they're on the cusp of taking that leap of faith?
Oh boy. I think the main thing I can say is, if it's your money, and it probably should be your money when you're starting up a company, because it feels more real. You have to actually pay attention. If it's your money, spend as little as possible. Starting up in a garage there's no shame in that. Starting up in a friend's garage, if if you think they'll remain friends, this is a whole other thing too. But basically, we started up very, very lean. I mean, I literally almost shut down, the whole idea when I had to buy $800 in screws. To actually place that order of this is $800 of screws. I mean, I literally will never use these for anything. If this thing goes boom and doesn't actually take off. So you gotta have a little faith, but don't overspend. Especially early on, and if you can, take as little money out as possible. It's just let it grow. Put it back in. It's probably not what you want to hear, because what you want to hear is cool. Go to a VC company, get a whole bunch of money, pay yourself a nice salary, get stock options, etc. I mean, that's what a lot of people, think of. I've had a lot of friends who've played that game up in San Jose and stuff like that, and it's really funny because the successes are far, fewer between than you might think, and the grind gets really old. You really need to wonder, is it worth doing literal 100-hour weeks, for the promise of stock options, or should I do my own thing, put in my money, and do the literal 100-hour weeks, which you'll still have to do, but have control over it. So
that's a good point. That's a very good point. Now going a little bit off topic, Mike Moffat's DS Pre was the first standalone DAC on the market. Now many consumers may not know that about him and about his beginnings. Do you feel that your DACs are evolved in comparison to other offerings out there as a direct effect of the heritage behind Mike's experience?
Yes and no. I think our products are different, and I think that's important. I think difference in DACs is important, because right now we're at a point where anyone can go to AKM or ESS. Oh wait, you can go to ESS. AKM's kind of they burnt to the ground in November. You can go to ESS, and if you are good with code, you can actually put together a very good and credible DAC, for not a lot of money. And same thing with AKM. When they come back in the market, it'll be the same kind of thing, except less code. The thing is, they're all the implementations are going to be similar. You're using the same basic ingredients. People like us, people like Cord, people like Exogal. There's a bunch of companies out there that are doing something different. Cord has their way of doing things. We have our way of doing things. Cord does FPGAs and a billion taps, or whatever they're up to now, and we have what we call true multi-bit, which is basically old school DAC, new school D-Day converters. They're still multi-bit D-Day converters, meaning They're 16 to 20 bit, actual bits. And then we have our own digital filter done in DSP that's kind of reminiscent of the research, Mike did at Theta. So, there is a kind of a direct lineage, and they're related, but the code is now different, of course. And so that's what we like. A lot of people will be like, well, they don't measure so good, or they don't do this or whatever. And it's like, yeah, it's old school. Here's some new school stuff. It's inexpensive, enjoy. Or you can have the stuff, we've worked on a long time. We think sounds better. We think is more true to the music. But that's our opinion. A lot of people think we're crazy. Seriously.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure, Chord gets the same thing. I'm sure people think they're crazy. Or PS Audio with their, where they convert everything to 10x DSD. People might think they're crazy too.
Right.
It's just, we're different. And I like seeing different approaches to D-to-A conversion, because I think it's the only way we're going to actually get some progress.
Right. Absolutely. Innovation for sure.
Mm-hmm.
You also said in your book, this isn't about getting everyone to like you. It's about getting some people to love you. And they totally do, because over the years, you've built this like cult following with consumers and reviewers. Was this the intention, or did you have a more, mainstream notoriety planned out?
It's funny. I don't know if we had any intention. When I wrote our 10th anniversary chapter, which went up last June, I was reflecting. A lot of people asked us, okay, now that you're 10 years, what happens in 5? What happens in another 10? And I'm like, you should probably think of us more as a 10-year-old human rather than a 10-year-old company. When we were born in the garage, I had no idea what the heck was going on. At 5 years old, I had no idea what I'd be at 10. 10-year-old kid doesn't know what he's going to do or she's going to do at 15. 10 years old versus 20, you might as well be on the moon. So we didn't have a lot of what you call a 5-year plan or master plan. But it's just, I've seen so many companies, that like, oh, we got to get, the largest market share possible. We got to appeal to everyone. It's like, that's great. You appeal to no one. That means no one cares. The guys who are successful, over a long period of time are typically smaller companies focused on one thing and doing it very well. And they're not worried about like making everyone love them. A great example outside of our industry is like, I don't know if you know Shun knives, the Japanese knives that you can use in the kitchen. Some people love them, some people hate them. They're very sharp. They're also very brittle. They're also not inexpensive. They're not hugely expensive, but they've just gone on and on and on and on and on forever. The market is nice and stable. They've seen a lot of challengers, and it doesn't seem to actually affected them because a lot of people love them. Or at least some people love them. No one likes them. People like a $99 knife set, sure, but they don't make anything like that. And they aren't going to make something that you can drop on the floor or put in a dishwasher. So we're kind of akin to that. We do our own thing. We have our quirks. We're trying to provide the highest value, but we know that that some people will love us and some people will hate us. And the thing is, we can treat everyone as well as we can. And hopefully some people love us. And so far, I think we're doing at least decent at that.
I think you have quite a bit of lovers out there for sure. So in your early days at Sumo, you discovered that amplifiers do sound different in comparison, which led you to the realization of the philosophy of subjective objectivism.
Yes.
Could you tell my audience a little bit more about that mindset and how it helps when developing new amplifiers today?
Yeah, I was totally shocked at Sumo because I was the world's most hardcore, objectivist. I'm like, well, I have these Carver amps. They measure, much higher than, Sumo amps, as far as power. So therefore they must be better. Done. Right. I even walked in when I bought them at the dealer back in the day. I walked into the dealer and said, I want these amps. He's like, well, you should listen to others. I'm like, no, I want those amps. I looked at the specs. This is what I'm going to get. I'm done. Right. So walked out, perfectly happy with them. And the guys at Sumo kept going, "Hey, take one of our amps, take one of our big amps." And I'm like, "This thing it's huge, it's low tech, it's not rated as high, it can't be as good." And they're like, "Just take one of the amps and try it." So I took one home, hooked it up, and went, "Oh, crap, this is wildly different and much better." And this is on a pair of hand-built speakers, which I actually still have today, that I was very familiar with. I knew what it could do. They were difficult loads, so they're probably not doing so well with the carvers. And the Sumo stuff, for whatever its weaknesses, I mean, it would drive a screwdriver. So it was doing very well into this. And so that was kind of my epiphany, was like, okay, so there's something more to this than just specs. And so that's what we actually do, every day at Sumo, or when I'm doing dev work. There's plenty of measurement, but there's a lot of just what does this sound like? Do I want to listen to it? And it's funny because we have Dave, who's our code guy, who, I swear, he thinks everything makes a difference. I mean, it's like what time you execute your code might make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
The power supplies, the board layout, etc. And I'm like, I'm a little bit more skeptical, but he's been right a lot of the times, which is really weird.
Well, I think that's the advantage that a lot of people like me, like that do reviews, almost every day. We have an evaluative listening habit. So we are sitting there looking for the subtle changes and the subtleties of changing things here and there. A lot of people don't do that. A lot of people, you could put, one amp or another, and they'll be like, "Oh, it sounds the same to me," but the people that are really listening for it, or obviously you must have had, a big enough difference of sound quality that you were like, "Whoa, that really does sound different." And I know back.
And I got one for you if you're interested in that. That's the Mike, early on in the development of what became Unison USB, our own USB interface. He's like, "I got this USB interface. It sounds fantastic. I mean, you won't believe how this sounds." And I'm like, "Mike, it's USB interface. It's bits. I honestly just don't see how it's going to be all that different." He's like, "Take one home, see what you think." Stick one home, plugged it in. And I'm like, "Oh, I mean, it's just like the Sumo thing." I'm like, "Holy crap, you got to be kidding me." And I'm like, so I called up Mike, and he's like, "What do you think?" I said, "It's broken." And he's like, "What do you mean it's broken?" I said, "Well, it's clearly broken because something that sounds this different is doing something wrong. And I'll be able to measure it, and I'll tell you how it's broken." The early versions actually were too unstable to measure on the AP. But when we finally got one that was measurable, that sounded the same as the other ones, no, it's fine. You can't measure the difference. It's it's the same as any other USB interface. Who cares? But it does sound different. And if you, in some corners, if you say, "Hey, USB interface sounds different," they're like, "Well, you're clearly insane." Like, no, that's what I hear, and we'll see how that goes.
That sometimes the smallest things can make a big difference. A lot of people, I mean, obviously the whole cable debate that has been going on since the beginning of audio, you still have people that are like, "Lamp cord sounds the same as everything else," but people, until people actually do the work, and kind of try it out for themselves, that's when they discover the small differences. And I think as I've grown with audio, it surprises me every day, when I hear something new or experience something new. It really is something special. And it's interesting you got the Carver amps, because the one thing endearing I think about Carver in the past was how he really wanted to make an affordable amplifier, but kind of take. He basically looked at like the expensive stuff and said, "Hey, I can do that for cheaper," and I think that's a pretty cool way of doing things back then. Now I've noticed there's not many companies like that, which I think I would consider Schiit Audio in that realm where you guys are trying to keep it as inexpensive as possible and create the most value for the customer.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right on the Carver side of things. One of the reasons I did like them, they were relatively affordable, and they had some interesting technology. I mean, they were doing really early Class G stuff that actually worked. I mean, it measured well. And sometimes I look at Class G and I go, why did we go to Class D when we had the? I mean, the Carver amps were very efficient,
Mm-hmm.
but I do like to look at what's out there, and sometimes we will go and do something less expensive. A lot of times, it's just like we're going to do what we like and what we think other people might like. It's like the Freya Plus. I mean, no one said, "Hey, I'd really like to have a stepped attenuator preamp that's also tube and you have a solid state and a pure passive mode." No one asked for that. No one was doing that.
Sure.
And we just went and did it, and that's one of the things we just can't keep in stock. I think because it's kind of a unique thing under $1,000.
It definitely is. A good friend of mine has one actually, and I find it to be very interesting. It's a very interesting device. I like it a lot. I get to play with it anytime I go to his house. So your brand is definitely contagious. Not only from the unique name, but the minimalist design of your product. You have a very marketable company and product. So you go into detail in the book about these astronomical marketing budgets that these huge companies have at their disposal. So how did you do it without the help of any type of traditional marketing, so to speak? Like you kind of just did it.
It's really two things. I mean, and the first is I won't put a fine point on it. The first thing is cheap. The first thing is like we didn't come in, with a $20,000 headphone amp and then decide to let's bring it down. We'll do a $5,000 one, $1,000. Yeah, we actually started at the lowest price we could do, which back then was $250. It was for the Asgard. We hadn't even imagined the $99 product yet, but that was the lowest practical price. So we started low, which is controversial, but let's face it. I mean, if you want to get people to try something, they're going to be much more apt to try something that's $250 rather than $2,500. And others, the name, it's unforgettable. We've had very few people complain about the name. There've been a few. The funniest was a dude who's like, "Yeah, I really don't like the Hell name because that's like satanic." And I'm like, "Did you look at the name of the company?" It's like name of the company shit. I mean, so you might need to re-examine your preconceptions there. But the name actually got us a lot of traction just because people couldn't forget it. And the fact that it's inexpensive to try, really helped a lot. And that's basically it. And since then, I mean, our marketing budget is paltry, to be very polite to it. Denise probably will laugh and go, yeah, it's horrifyingly small. She's actually managed, some big budgets before. And we literally have 0 people in the entire company with sales in their title. So there are no salespeople either. So we have Denise for marketing with a small budget and no sales. Every year to date, we've grown. So I guess it's working.
Yeah, and I mean, apparently this last year, even though there was a lot of, the tragedy of the, all that stuff that happened. Audio companies have been doing better. A lot of audio companies are doing better because a lot of people are at home and, not doing anything and want to listen to some music.
Yeah, I was extremely worried about this time last year when we started going into the lockdowns and stuff. Mm-hmm. I don't want to, spit on the tragedy, but I mean, the sales took off and just kept going. I'm like, I don't understand this, but I guess, yeah, staying at home, and being comfortable and being entertained while you're home is important. And so, some audio companies have definitely benefited from that.
There you go. Now, you mentioned a little, like, a few minutes ago about the names. So, what is the motivation behind naming the products? Because sometimes I feel like it's a lot of like Thor is going to come down with his hammer, and like what's the motive? What was the motivation behind a lot of these names?
Oh, you're going to laugh. The real motivation was, actually, I didn't know what to call things at the beginning. I was thinking of something simple, numerical, whatever. But let's face it, that's super boring.
Mm-hmm.
Sumo used to use a mixture of Greek and Roman mythology, and sometimes they threw in some stars just for the heck of it. They just chose interesting names. And I'm like, I do like interesting names, but Greek and Roman's been done, and et cetera. And I'm like, Norse is interesting because not only is it a little different, they named everything. I mean, they named, axes, they named chains, they named gods, they named dwarves, they named houses, they named places. It's like, I'll never run out of names. It's great. And that's literally why we chose it. And plus, a lot of the names are really cool. So
they are. I gotta say, you're. I don't know why that guy was offended by the hell, reference, but it just I don't know. It's like the names fit the aesthetic of the product. I think it kind of flows well together.
We actually try to kind of fit them. It's like we have a very large monoblock amp coming out that I mentioned. I think somewhere online recently. It's called Tyr. Tyr is the one-armed god of war. It's like it's a monoblock amp. It's a one-armed god of war. There you go.
Funny. That is funny.
So we're trying to have some meaning in it.
Right.
Or Folkvanger, which is our big 10-tube amp, 10-tube headphone amp we're coming out with. Everyone's like, why is it called Folkvanger? I'm like, because it's the better Valhalla. It's like every warrior goes to Valhalla, if they die in battle. But Freya chooses only the best to go to Folkvanger, which is like her special hall. And so, yeah, tube amp, but it's better. There you go.
I think once people start putting that together, they're going to be like, wow, like that does make sense,
Yeah. We're trying, sometimes it make a lot of sense, but no, we're trying especially on the newer stuff to make more.
Jason, I think you're doing a great job. So a bit off topic, you make a Dune reference in your book. And so I want to know if A, you're excited for the new movie, and B, where is Fade Routha in the new movie? Why did they leave him out?
I actually don't know. Okay, from the previews I've seen of the new movie, I'm like, huh. I've seen that before. I've seen that before. I've seen that before. I've seen that before. All in the '84 movie, and I'm like, so surprise me with something new, but every scene they've showed, it's like, well, okay, it's updated. I'm sure it's higher res, probably looks better, etc. But I'm not seeing anything surprising. I don't know. Maybe a great movie. Maybe I think he's splitting into 2 movies, so maybe more time would be good because the '84 one was incomprehensible if you didn't read the book.
Right.
So I'm open. I'd love to see a much better interpretation of it.
Correct, yeah.
I'm sure I'll go and see it. Come on. I'm a sucker for science fiction.
Yeah, you got to. And I think it's kind of wrong of Star Wars to have taken so much from Dune and not, giving credit where credit is due. But, I think now with the big budget science fiction films, I think it's going to have its day. I think a lot of people that didn't read the books and don't even know about the books are going to quickly learn and want to, to get into that whole ecosystem of science fiction.
So it's a great story. So yeah. I'd love to see it, be more popular. I'd love to see, some lesser known science fiction actually, get some traction as well. But, that's that could get into a whole discussion on the whole, studio thing of like, I'd love to see them, break up their $250 million budgets and do, 10, $25 million movies, or better yet, 90, $2 million movies, and, one $25 million movie. But that's me, and I'm not the studios, and I don't finance this stuff. So that is what it is.
Yeah. When I saw that reference in your book, I'm like, yeah, we're going to be friends. We're definitely going to be friends for sure. Cause not too many people know about it or remember it, and actually that was the first video game I ever played on PC was the original Dune video
Really?
game. So, yeah. So
Yeah.
it has a lot of memories for me, but yeah, I'm kind of curious why they didn't include Sting's character. I mean, if Sting could have came back to play it, that would have been really cool.
That would have been weird, but also appropriate.
Yeah.
No,
So
it may be great. It's like maybe they're playing it safe, on the previews, but I don't know yet.
right. So now I got a different question for you. If most CEOs and business owners take the time to read your book and learn from your journey, they'll quickly realize how many things they're probably doing wrong or could be doing differently. Why give away the golden blueprint to companies that could very well mimic your brand and create more competition in the niche you currently command?
I'm actually not worried about competition on a niche. I think this is an extremely specialized, niche. I mean, it just evidenced by, I'm sure you've told people, oh yeah, high-end audio, and they immediately go, Bose or Beats or, AirPods even, which, we would all consider, it's kind of mid-grade, at best. It's not high-end. Right. People don't really know what high-end is, or they'll think, oh, you mean pro, you mean pro gear, not consumer. We're a real small business. I think we have a great position here. I think if we don't, get complacent and keep, challenging ourselves, I think that we have a good place here. I would actually like to take some of my own, things I said in my book and maybe apply them to other industries. I've been joking, and not really joking, but with some people, it's like, we need to make a toaster. And they're like, why? I'm like, because there are no US made toasters. There are exactly zero, none. They do not exist. And I'm like, I'm not going to get into the whole politics of like USA made versus Chinese made or whatever. But if you want to make if you want to actually buy a toaster made in USA, I think that you should be able to if you really feel like it. Mm-hmm. I guarantee you, I can make a better, $200 toaster than the British brand, the Dualit brand, which is completely insane, but it is made in the UK. And so that might be a separate company. That might be something we do. We may do some weird stuff, that's not even in audio, because I think we need to keep challenging ourselves. And I see an opportunity. When there's nothing out there, I see an opportunity. And it's like, maybe we need to drive in and park on that. Maybe someone will do that before us. Cool. I don't have to do it then. I got a lot of other ideas. In the end, if more companies can actually, start up without, a ton of debt, or, without being beholden to a corporate board, or without worrying about, is this the right way to do things? Or, can I make a bunch of value for my investors and exit? I think the world's going to be better, because we're not aiming to be public. We're not aiming to be the largest anything. We're just, we'd like to make good products, and we hope other people like them. Mm-hmm. That's bottom line.
Awesome. Very awesome. And that's a good way to look at things. It's a great way to look at things. Like you said, I wish more companies would share your philosophy on all of this, but they can't all. Not everybody has the same goal set in mind and mindset and everything. So,
other people they have other challenges too. I mean, to be totally fair, I mean, there are companies that are going to be much more capital intensive, and then you're going to have to answer to the money people a lot more than we do. We literally, started in the garage and have no debt. So it's like, we have nobody to answer to. If we have a bad quarter, it's like, oh, well. I mean, heck, 2019 was a horrible year just because we overbuilt everything. So we actually had a loss, but then 2020 was a great year. So, and 2018 was great. It's like, so who cares? Who cares? But I might have been ousted. Mike and I may have been ousted in 2019 if we'd been run like a normal company. Because like, how dare you, for 4 quarters, maintain, a loss. It's like,
Right.
well, because we overbuilt. We did 14 products, which was stupid in retrospect, and we built lots of them, which is even dumber. So we've now learned that, and I think we're doing better at managing what we're doing. We'll see how this year goes. Who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe I'll come back and say, yeah, I had another loss. Oh, well.
So is there a particular product that you don't offer that people keep asking you to make, and have you ever developed a product solely on the request of the consumers?
It's funny, a lot of people ask us for some really strange stuff. I think one of the things that keeps coming back, though, is they want an electronic crossover. And I'm like, that's some super specialized stuff. That's really for people who have access to, the upper and lower end of their speakers, without crossovers, so they can do a electronic, bi-amp, type setup. But people keep asking for that, or they keep asking for stuff that can be integrated into home theater. I want home theater bypass. I want a processor loop. I want, lots and lots of outputs. So far we haven't really done anything to address those. Most of our ideas do actually draw on, what people tell us, but a lot of them are just like, this would be kind of fun. It'd be weird to do. The big 10 tube amp kind of came about by 2 factors. One is like, we have a whole lot of these 6N 6P tubes, and the other is I knew that we could do far better than Valhalla. As a pure tube, an actual pure tube amp. And I always wanted to do something big, and I experimented with, actually the 6AS7 tubes and things like that. I did some stuff like that, and I went, it's nice, but it's kind of like what other people are doing. So it evolved into this wacky thing that nobody is doing because it's completely insane. It's an OTL OCL tube amp. So it's output transformerless, but there's also no coupling caps. So your headphones are connected directly to the tubes. And if that scares you, probably should run away, just not come around. There's lots of protection, built into it, but it is unlike anything else out there. And when I sparked it up, I figured, it actually might not be that good. It may be kind of thin sounding, because output coupling caps kind of tend to give things kind of a fatter sound. It might, be weird, but it's actually one of the most addicting things we've made. And I have actually, to this day, kept myself from measuring it. I will not measure it, other than go, the hum is so low I can't hear it. I'll measure it eventually. I'll measure it before we actually release it. But this thing was developed really just by ear, and I'm sure the measurements will be absolutely and utterly horrifying to anyone who wants very great measurements.
Right.
So run away. And there may be a warning sticker on it that's like, probably best not to plug in IEMs to it, because even with like 8 servos keeping everything in place and DC sensing, the DC does dance around a bit, 10 or 20 millivolts. So great for full size headphones. I don't know if I'd be plugging in IEMs to it. So that's the kind of thing. It's like, you know what? We may make 100 of them. We may make 500 of them. We may make 100 of them and 5 of them will sell, or we may make 5,000. I don't know, but it seemed like a fun idea, so we're doing it.
Cool. That's always a good thing to go with your gut, and right now I just entered the world of headphones, and I'm on the quest to find a suitable headphone amp for me. Mm-hmm. And I've already tried one. I've only tried one, so I have nothing to compare it to. And I actually did a review on it that's going to be coming out in a few weeks. Mm-hmm. And I'm kind of on the quest. So I'm sure I'll be purchasing some nice Schiit headphone amps and trying them out and everything. Because I when I was a kid, I always listened to stuff on my headphones because I didn't want to disturb my parents, you know.
Right.
So it just kind of brings back that, and then as well as it's so relaxing, you know, when you have a comfortable pair of headphones. I mean, I usually I use my HiFi Man, or I have, you know, a new pair of Fostex that I really like. Um, yeah, I just need, like, every time I plug it into my phone or whatever, I'm like, it just feels like it needs to be driven. You know, it feels like it needs that extra oomph to get, you know, that extra bass response and to really
Okay.
drive the mids and the highs. So,
Especially if you're doing planers, yeah.
mhm.
But,
Yeah.
it's funny because in the office here at home, I either use the Jotunheim 2, in the office, which it's good all around, drive pretty much anything, or the Folkvanger prototype is kind of sitting behind me. And, when it's cool outside and, I don't mind an amp that sits there and dissipates, like, I think about 120 watts at idle. I mean, you can literally kind of feel the heat coming off of it.
Hmm.
It's a great sounding thing, but it's so completely and utterly insane. I can't, with a straight face say, hey, oh, everyone should have one of these. It's
Yeah.
like, no, it's completely nuts.
You know, I do get a hard time sometimes from other audiophiles because I like tone control. And the Loki was actually something that really, like, jumped out at me. I'm like, that's a cool product. You know, that's a really good idea because a lot of the higher end stuff doesn't come with tone control anymore.
Yeah, very little. I think Macintosh is starting to put it back on a lot of their stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, I think they're, on their like they have integrated amps, so at least have bass and treble, or bass, mid, and treble. I'm pretty sure.
Hmm.
It's starting to come back. And I just announced we are going to have what we call Loki Max, which is a crazy. It actually uses relay potentiometers rather than actual pots. It's a 6-band pure LC, so it's all inductor capacitor, no gyrators, nothing like that, in a Freya size chassis. And it has remote control and presets. So basically, when you hit a preset, all of the knobs turn to the preset, and you hear all the relays clicking and everything. It's sad, but a lot of people probably buy it just because it does fancy things like that. It won't be cheap, but it will sound really good. It has all of the technologies we can throw at it. It's got Nexus in it and everything. So that should be coming. I don't know, maybe summer. I'm always wrong, so take that with a huge grain of salt.
No problem.
But it has been released to production.
Okay. So it's in the works. That's good. That's good to know. Well, I know a lot of people are also worried about introducing new components into their signal chain. You know, they think it's going to
Yeah.
introduce more noise and things of that sort. But I also read in your book that you guys focus a lot on eliminating that unnecessary noise.
Yeah.
That is that one of your main focuses, to make sure you have a nice clean signal chain?
It absolutely is. And I mean, even the standard Loki Mini is like super quiet. I mean, the noise floor is down around like minus 140 dB. There's some minor power supply spikes, but I don't think there's anything above minus 125 or so. So it's super quiet. And the big Loki is even better. We focus on that a lot because you can argue about audibility of distortion. Where does it come in? Can anyone really hear anything different below minus 80 or not? Or, should you be shooting for minus 120 or 130 or, whatever, the latest and greatest is. But one thing anyone can hear is hiss and hum. And when you have a system that hums and hisses and does, it's not great. People really hate that. So one of the things we try to do is keep that low. Of course, if you have a ground loop, then that might throw everything off, which is a whole nother thing. AC powered equipment is great until you plug a bunch of stuff into different outlets in the wall, and suddenly it's like, hey, I've got a hum that won't go away. Try plugging it all in one place, and then try using hum X's or hum eliminator. But yeah, it's we do pay a lot of attention to that. And one of the great things about being kind of on the headphone side is literally the first thing you'll hear about any headphone amp is how quiet it is. Because you'll be like, oh, I think it's great with IEMs. And someone will go, well, I have a 126 dB efficient IEM and I can hear a little hiss. It's like, so there you go. You got to be really good at that if you want to do all the headphones.
Yeah, I have seen a few reviewers, review your gear, and I mean, it's always positive. You never see a negative review about your products, which I think is awesome. Especially at the price point, I think you're getting a lot more value than people are anticipating.
Yeah, and like I said, we're trying. And one of the things, the separation between Texas and California, a lot of people have asked about that, and it's like the reason we're doing that is Texas is going to be about the products that are high volume. We need to make a lot of Magnies and Modis, and they have to be all perfect, but we have to do huge volume. A Vidar, a Ragnarok 2, big Loki, even a Jotunheim, et cetera. Those stand in California, where we actually have product teams that will be building and testing them, and so that's more of a slow thing. It's like, okay, take your time, make sure they're right. Put them on the burn rack, leave them for 4 days if you want to, and that's really why we're doing it. So we can split up into teams here in California, and then in Texas it can be more streamlined. It's like, okay, we're going to build, pick a number, 500 or 1,000 Magnies a day, that kind of thing, and be able to package that and ship that. And right now it is, it's a bit disorganized, because we're 3 days into it. But once actually it's worked out in the next week or so, it's going to be huge. We'll be able to increase amp production 2 or 3 times here, and finally get out of back orders, and we'll be able to make a lot more in Texas, and finally get out of, heck, we're in back order, I think, on even on Magni Heresy right now. So the back orders are huge. We can't keep up.
Right.
We have to fix that.
Yeah, I have noticed that there's a huge demand right now for your products. So
yeah, and we really gotta take care of the orders and take care of the distributors, and maybe even get a few things back on Amazon someday. But right now, I mean, it's like, so serving the distributors in Amazon has been almost impossible as of last year, and we do need to get back to that. But holy moly, there's a lot of stuff to do.
Yeah, it's what happens when you grow. You gotta, well, at least you have that, the factory in Texas ready to go, and things can start, being produced, and things can move forward.
Yeah, because we started building a couple days early last week in Texas, and as of Monday, everyone was, full staff was there, and they're building and shipping. So that's a huge milestone.
That's a good sign. That's a good sign.
Alex basically had to, take what he did in the last 8 years and do it in about 6 weeks.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. It was rough, but he seems to be holding up pretty well.
Awesome. Well, Jason, I want to wish you the best of luck with everything. I want to thank you for being on my show. I think we definitely got a chance to talk about some great stuff. I would love to have you back at a later date whenever you have an announcement to make or any new products you'd like to share with my audience. Love to have you back.
Sure. Actually, we're announcing a new product tomorrow. It's a little too early, but as of 7:00 tomorrow, I'm going to make something live. Yeah, but we should have a reasonable number of products live this year. So maybe when Big Loki goes live or something, since you like the idea of EQ, maybe we'll talk about that a bit, because we're really trying to take on the highest of the high end equalizers with that, and we'll see. Some people love it, and some people are going to be like, "Yeah, you're crazy."
Well, either way, I think it's going to be successful. So I know I'll be into it.
Yeah, no, I will use the large Loki. The smaller one I haven't actually used a lot, but that's mainly just because I have a lot of balanced equipment, and I haven't actually had anything really to plug in there, and it's horrible to say that because balanced is not the be all end all. It's just, it is an approach.
Mhm.
You don't necessarily need it, but since I'm using a Jotunheim too, it's like, yeah, I'd rather have something I could plug into the balanced input rather than not.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again, Jason, for joining us, and we will see you all next week for a new edition of HiFi Hour. See you later.